Major Amanda Blake's fingers danced across the holographic display, adjusting the Mars Command's long-range sensors. The red planet's thin atmosphere had always made for excellent astronomical observations, but today's readings were different. They were wrong. "Sir," Lieutenant Rodriguez called from his station, "gravitational anomalies are increasing. Whatever this is, it's big." Blake pulled up the three-dimensional tactical display, watching as space itself seemed to fold. She'd spent 15 years in Earth's Space Force, but nothing in her training had prepared her for this. The anomalies were forming a pattern, a massive orchestrated pattern that could only be artificial. "Sound General Quarters," she ordered, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "And get me a direct line to Earth Command." The klaxons barely had time to start wailing before reality tore open. The ships that emerged weren't like anything humanity had built. They were organic, almost crystalline in appearance, their hulls shifting and flowing like liquid metal. Blake counted 7. No, 12 vessels, each larger than Earth's biggest battleships. Multiple contacts. Rodriguez's voice cracked. "Energy readings are off the charts. There." A transmission cut through every channel, every frequency. The voice spoke perfect English, but there was something wrong about it, something that made Blake's skin crawl. "Primitive species," the voice announced, its tone dripping with contempt. "This is Dominion Commander Xarax of the Valderi Expeditionary Force. Your system is now under our protection. Surrender your military installations and accept our guidance, or face immediate correction." Blake's training kicked in. "This is Major Amanda Blake of the Earth Space Force, Mars Command. We are a sovereign species. Any hostile action will be met with. Your species has not yet learned its place." The voice seemed almost amused. "Perhaps a demonstration is required." The tactical display exploded with warnings. Energy readings spiked as one of the Valderi ships oriented toward Olympus Colony, humanity's largest settlement on Mars, home to over 200,000 civilians. "No," Blake whispered, then louder. "No, they're civilians. There are children." The beam that struck Olympus Colony wasn't plasma or laser or any weapon humanity had encountered. It simply unmade everything it touched. The massive dome cracked, then shattered, then ceased to exist. The ground beneath liquefied, then vanished. 200,000 lives ended in seconds. Blake's mind raced. The quantum sensors, the prototype they'd been testing. If they could gather data on the weapon. "Send everything," she ordered, her voice hoarse. "All channels, all frequencies. Earth needs to know what we're facing." Her crew worked with desperate efficiency, knowing these would be their final moments. The quantum sensors spun up, collecting terabytes of data about the Valderi weapons, their shields, their very physics. Data transmission initiated, Rodriguez reported, his hand steady even as tears streaked down his face. "They're targeting us next, Major." Blake stood straight, staring at the tactical display as another Valderi beam charge. "Keep transmitting until the end. Earth needs every second of data we can give them." She thought of her daughter back on Earth, of the message she'd never get to send. But maybe, just maybe, her death would give humanity a fighting chance. The beam lanced out. In the milliseconds before it struck, Blake smiled. The Valderi had made a mistake. They'd shown humanity their power, thinking it would break their spirit. Instead, they'd given Earth's scientists priceless data about their capabilities. "Your genocide ends here," she whispered as the beam approached. "We'll show you what happens when you push humanity into a corner." Mars Command vanished in a flash of impossible light. But by then, the data was already racing toward Earth, carried on quantum-encrypted channels the Valderi didn't even know existed. The opening move had been made. Humanity's response would show the galaxy why you never, ever strike first against Earth. Colonel James "Mad Dog" Harrison ignored the whispers as he limped into the United Earth Defense Council chamber. His prosthetic leg, a souvenir from the Resource Wars, clicked against the marble floor with each step. The assembled politicians and generals fell silent as he reached the podium, their eyes fixed on the data tablet in his scared hands. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice gravelly from years of shouting orders in combat. 12 hours ago, we lost Mars Command. The last transmission from Major Amanda Blake included this." He gestured, and the chamber's holographic display flickered to life. The destruction of Olympus Colony played out in horrific detail. Several council members turned away. Harrison didn't let them. "Look at it," he demanded. "This is what we're facing. But more importantly," he paused the footage, zooming in on the Valdari weapon signature. "This is what Major Blake died to give us." Admiral Chen leaned forward. The quantum sensor data, complete readings of their weapons, their shields, even their drive signatures. Harrison's eyes gleamed. Blake knew she was dead, so she did what humans do best. She found a way to hurt them back. "And what good is this data?" Senator Williams scoffed. "Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. The rational choice is to negotiate." "The rational choice," Harrison cut in, "is to do what humanity has always done when backed into a corner. We adapt. We overcome. And then we make our enemies regret ever hearing the word Earth." He brought up another display. Operation Looking Glass. "The Valdari think they're superior because their tech is more advanced. But Blake's data showed us something crucial. They have no concept of electronic warfare, no understanding of tactical deception. Their battle computers are advanced, yes, but they're predictable." The display showed simulation after simulation. Valdari ships, falling for basic military tactics that had been perfected on Earth centuries ago. "They've never faced an enemy that could hurt them before," Harrison continued. "So they never developed real military doctrine. No combined arms tactics, no strategic depth. They just overwhelm with superior firepower." "And how does this help us?" General Roberts asked, but there was interest in his voice now. Harrison smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. "Because humanity. We've been killing each other since we invented the pointy stick. Every trick, every tactic, every dirty fighting technique we've developed over thousands of years. They've never seen any of it." He pulled up his final display, a complete reorganization of Earth's military forces. "We don't need to match their technology. We need to show them why humanity turned warfare into an art form. You want to fight an advanced alien species using historical military tactics." Williams sounded incredulous. "I want to fight them using everything we've got. Guerrilla warfare, false flag operations. Hell, we'll adapt submarine warfare doctrine to space combat if we have to." Harrison's voice grew intense. "They expect us to behave like every other species they've conquered, to either surrender or throw ourselves uselessly against their superior tech. Instead, we're going to show them why picking a fight with humanity was the biggest mistake they've ever made." The room was silent for a long moment. Then Admiral Chen stood. "The Chinese fleet supports this plan. The European Space Force agrees," General Mueller added. One by one, the military leaders stood. Even Senator Williams, after a long moment, nodded grudgingly. Harrison looked at the final image from Mars, Major Blake's determined face in her last transmission. "They struck first, thinking we were primitive. By the time we're done, they'll understand why Earth's history of warfare makes us the most dangerous species they've ever encountered." He straightened, his prosthetic leg whirring. "Operation Looking Glass begins now. Let's show these bastards what happens when you give humanity a reason to get creative with combat." The United Earth Defense Council's approval was unanimous. The Valdari had started this war with overwhelming force. Humanity would end it with the accumulated knowledge of thousands of years of combat evolution. Lieutenant Kate Ghost Walker floated in the void, her stealth ship powered down to bare minimum life support. The experimental light-absorbing coating made the vessel nearly invisible against the backdrop of space, but it was the next part that would prove whether humanity's gambit would work. "Status check," she whispered into her comm. though sound couldn't travel in space. Old habits died hard. Ready on passive sensors, her XO, Mike Torres, replied just as quietly. Quantum array is hot, but silent. If they can detect it, we're already dead. The Valderi patrol route would bring them through this sector in approximately 3 minutes. Everything they knew about the aliens came from Major Blake's last transmission and the scattered debris of destroyed colonies. Now they needed more. Remember, Kate reminded her small crew, we're not here to fight. We're here to prove a theory. The theory was Colonel Harrison's brainchild, that the Valderi's technological superiority had made them predictable, that they followed the same patrol routes, used the same tactics, relied on the same strategies that had worked for them for millennia. Proximity alerts flashed silently on their screens. Right on schedule, 3 Valderi cruisers emerged from FTL. Jesus, Torres breathed. They're actually following the exact same route as yesterday, down to the meter. Kate allowed herself a small smile. Begin passage scans. Let's see what other patterns we can find. For 6 hours, they shadowed the Valderi fleet, playing dead whenever sensors swept their area. The light-absorbing coating worked better than anyone had hoped, but it was the Valderi's own arrogance that proved their greatest ally. They're not even running active scans most of the time, their sensor officer, Sarah Chen, reported. They're so confident in their superiority, they're operating on passive sensors only. Kate watched as the aliens conducted their patrol. Every movement was precise, rehearsed, efficient, and utterly lacking in tactical awareness. They maintained the same formations, kept the same distances, followed the same protocols. They'd never needed to adapt, she realized aloud. They've never fought anyone who could challenge them. Look, they don't even maintain combat space patrol around their capital ships. No point defense practice, no electronic warfare drills. Then she saw something that made her blood run cold. Their command and control, she whispered. It's completely centralized. No individual ship initiative at all. Everything runs through their flagship. Torres looked up from his station. That's impossible. No advanced civilization would be that tactically rigid. Unless, Kate countered. They've never needed to be anything else. They've won every war through overwhelming force. They've never faced an enemy who could take out their command ships. The implications were staggering. The Valderi weren't just predictable. They were vulnerable in ways they didn't even understand. Package all of this, she ordered. Every scan, every observation. Colonel Harrison needs to see this immediately. As her crew compiled the data, Kate composed her report. The Valderi had no concept of electronic warfare because they'd never needed it. They had no continuity of operations plans because they'd never lost a command ship. And most importantly, they had no imagination, because imagination was born of desperation, and they'd never been desperate. Ghost to command, she transmitted on their quantum-encrypted channel. Operation Looking Glass Phase 1 complete. You're not going to believe what we found. She took one last look at the Valderi fleet, almost feeling sorry for them. They had no idea what was coming. No idea that their greatest strength, their technological superiority, had left them blind to their greatest weakness. They'd forgotten how to think like survivors. Humanity, on the other hand, had never forgotten. Had never stopped improving, adapting, evolving their warfare doctrine. The Valderi were about to learn why you should never push a species that had spent its entire history learning to fight smarter, not just stronger. Ghost, beginning silent running. We're coming home. And we're bringing the key to their defeat with us. Commander Michael Trickshot Rodriguez watched his carrier group's formation through the tactical display. 16 ships moving in perfect synchronization around the brown dwarf star. To any observer, they looked like a retreating force, beaten and desperate. That was exactly what he wanted the Valderi to think. Gravitational slingshot calculations complete, his navigation officer reported. Sir, with all due respect, this is insane. That's why it'll work, Lieutenant, Rodriguez replied, his eyes fixed on the approach vector. The Valderi's combat computers can't process what they consider impossible. And this, he grinned, this is definitely impossible. When Ghost's recon data had revealed the Valderi's tactical rigidity, Rodriguez had proposed something that had made even Colonel Harrison pause. Using 20th century submarine warfare tactics in three-dimensional space, the brown dwarf's gravity well would be their ally. The massive stellar object's pull was already affecting their ships, requiring constant course corrections. To the Valderi sensors, it would look like battle damage affecting their maneuverability. Valderi fleet incoming, Tactical announced. 5 capital ships, 20 escorts. They're pursuing exactly as predicted. Rodriguez nodded. Launch the packages. Let's see if Lieutenant Walker's data was right about their sensor blind spots. Dozens of small objects deployed from his ships, looking like debris to casual scans. In reality, they were a mix of nuclear weapons and the prototype quantum torpedoes developed from Major Blake's final data transmission. Sir, communications cut in. We're receiving their standard demand for surrender. Send no response. Rodriguez checked the time. Let them think we're too damaged to communicate. Status on the gravity calculations. Slingshot trajectory locked in. But sir, if we're off by even half a degree, we won't be. Rodriguez had earned his call sign by making shots others considered impossible. All ships, execute on my mark. The Valderi fleet closed in, their formation perfect, their tactics unchanged from 1,000 victorious battles. They had no reason to think this would be any different. They were wrong. Mark. Rodriguez's carrier group executed a maneuver that would have been suicide in normal space. They cut engines completely, letting the brown dwarf's gravity take hold. To the Valderi, it looked like total systems failure. They're moving to capture positions, Tactical reported. Taking the bait. The alien fleet spread out in their standard containment pattern, surrounding what they thought were crippled prey. They never noticed the debris behind them beginning to move. Now, the brown dwarf's gravity well did what no human engine could. It accelerated their weapons to velocities that bent physics. The nuclear weapons struck first, their explosions masking the approach of the quantum torpedoes. The Valderi shields, calibrated for conventional weapons, held against the nuclear blasts. But they weren't prepared for what came next. Quantum torpedoes, their payload derived from the Valderi's own weapon signatures, passed through their shields as if they didn't exist. 3 capital ships vanished in flashes of impossible light, their atoms scattered across space. Direct hits. Tactical's voice was triumphant. Their formation is breaking. The remaining Valderi ships reacted with textbook precision, exactly as their combat computers dictated. But their programmed responses were designed for conventional warfare, not an enemy who turned gravity itself into a weapon. All ships, full power, Rodriguez ordered. Show them what else we learned from submarine warfare. His carrier group emerged from their controlled fall, engines blazing, attacking from vectors the Valderi's rigid tactical doctrine never considered possible. Ships that seemed crippled moments ago now moved with predatory grace, striking from the Valderi's own blind spots. The alien fleet retreated, leaving their dead behind. They would report this as an anomaly, Rodriguez knew. Their pride wouldn't let them accept that a primitive species had outmaneuvered them. Send word to Colonel Harrison, he ordered. Operation Looking Glass Phase 2 complete. The Valderi can bleed. As his ships regrouped, Rodriguez studied the tactical display. The Valderi would return, of course, with bigger ships, stronger shields, more weapons. But now they would doubt. And doubt, against an enemy as creative as humanity, was the beginning of the end. Captain Emily Cobra Winters stood on the bridge of the U.S. Hydra, watching her Phantom fleet dance across the tactical display. The deception was beautiful in its simplicity. For every real human warship, 5 inflatable decoys floated in space, each broadcasting false electromagnetic signatures that perfectly mimicked combat vessels. Status on the Valderi response fleet. she asked, adjusting the holographic controls with practiced precision. 37 capital ships detected, Captain, her tactical officer reported. They've committed nearly half their remaining forces to this sector. They're taking the bait. After Rodriguez's devastating ambush, the Valderi have deployed their reserves, determined to crush what they saw as a lucky human victory. Instead, they were falling into the largest trap in military history. Begin Operation Medusa, Winters ordered. Let's show them why you don't chase shadows in space. The inflatable decoys, crafted from metamaterials that absorbed and reflected radiation, just like real warships, began their carefully choreographed dance. Each was powered by minimal fusion cells, just enough to maintain their electronic signatures and basic maneuvering. Valderi fleet is splitting up, Tactical announced with a hint of satisfaction. They're trying to engage all targets simultaneously. Winters smiled. The Valderi's rigid tactical doctrine was working against them again. Their combat computers, detecting what appeared to be multiple human battle groups, were following standard containment protocols, spreading their forces thin to engage all threats. Launch Phase 2, she commanded. Let's add some more ghosts to their nightmares. From the cargo holds of her real ships, hundreds more decoys deployed. To the Valderi's advanced sensors, it must have looked impossible. Human ships seemingly multiplying before their eyes, appearing from nowhere, defying their understanding of physics and military doctrine. Mom, communications cut in. We're intercepting Valderi transmissions. Their command structure. They're arguing with each other. Send everything to linguistics, Winters ordered. Every second of confusion is another advantage. The Valderi fleet's formation began to deteriorate. Their perfectly synchronized movements became erratic as different commanders argued over which threats were real and which were false. Their sensors, designed to detect energy signatures, were being overwhelmed by the sheer volume of targets. They're launching long-range scans, Tactical reported tensely. If they figure out the decoys. They won't, Winters interrupted. Because now we show them why electronic warfare is an art form. She keyed in the final sequence. Every decoy simultaneously altered its signature, changing power outputs and energy patterns in ways that should have been impossible for real ships. The Valderi's combat computers, trying to track thousands of targets that didn't behave according to any known physics, began to crash. Multiple Valderi ships reporting systems failures. Communications announced triumphantly. Their targeting systems can't handle the conflicting data. That was the moment Winters had been waiting for. All actual ships. Execute attack pattern Hydra. Show them where the real teeth are. Her genuine warships, hidden among the chaos of phantom signatures, struck with devastating precision. They targeted the confused Valderi vessels with weapons specifically designed to exploit the weaknesses in their now rebooting systems. The battle, if it could even be called that, was over in minutes. The mighty Valderi fleet retreated in disarray, leaving behind 11 destroyed capital ships and countless damaged vessels, all without a single human casualty. Send word to Colonel Harrison, Winters ordered, allowing herself a moment of pride. Operation hyper-successful. The Valderi just learned that in space, not everything that shows up on sensors is real, and not everything real shows up on sensors. As her crew celebrated, Winters studied the tactical display showing the retreating Valderi ships. They would adapt, she knew. They would try to develop countermeasures against inflatable decoys and false signatures. But that was the beauty of human warfare. By the time they figured out how to fight this trick, humanity would have invented 10 more. The Valderi were about to learn why Earth's military doctrine wasn't just about technology. It was about the endless creativity of a species that had turned deception into an art form. Begin recovery of salvageable decoys, she ordered. The real war is just beginning. Admiral Thomas Old School Parker traced his finger along the star chart, following the Valderi supply lines. After decades of studying naval warfare, he saw patterns that others missed. Space wasn't an ocean, but the principles remained the same. Every fleet needed supplies. Every supply line had vulnerabilities, and every vulnerability could be exploited. "Status on Wolfpack Alpha?" he asked, his weathered face illuminated by the holographic display. "In position," Admiral Commander Sarah Hayes reported. "All 6 hunter-killer groups are maintaining silent running. The Valderi supply convoy is exactly where we predicted." Parker nodded. The Valderi's rigid adherence to schedules and routes, the very thing that had made them efficient, was now their greatest weakness. After Captain Winter's devastating electronic warfare campaign, they'd been forced to divert massive resources to protect their main battle fleets. But they'd forgotten the oldest lesson in warfare: armies march on their stomachs. "Begin Operation Drumbeat," Parker ordered, named after the U-boat campaign that had nearly brought America to its knees in 1942. "Let's show them why submarine warfare works in any medium." The human ships, running with minimal power signatures and covered in metamaterials that absorbed sensor suites, began their approach. They moved like predators, using the debris fields of previous battles for cover. "Valderi escort screen maintaining standard formation," Tactical reported. "They still haven't adapted to 3-dimensional threat vectors." Parker allowed himself a grim smile. The Valderi understood space warfare in 2 dimensions, like ships on an ocean. They never looked up or down enough, never truly grasped the tactical possibilities of genuine 3-dimensional combat. "All wolf packs, execute attack plan Mahan 7, he commanded, invoking the naval theorist whose principles had shaped warfare for centuries. "Show them why humanity never forgot the lessons we learned in the Atlantic." The attack began with precision that would have made any U-boat commander proud. Human ships struck from above and below simultaneously, emerging from their hidden positions like sharks sensing blood. The Valderi escorts, arranged in a flat defensive screen, couldn't react fast enough to threats from multiple vectors. "First wave successful," Hayes announced. 3 supply ships destroyed, 2 more crippled. Valderi escorts are attempting to reform their defensive line. But they're still thinking 2-dimensionally," Parker finished. "Execute Phase 2. The second wave of human ships attacked not from new directions, but from within the Valderi formation itself. They'd been hiding there all along, playing dead among the debris of the first strike, waiting for the perfect moment." Multiple direct hits. Tactical's voice was triumphant. "Valderi command and control is breaking down. Their escorts are firing blindly." Parker watched as centuries of naval doctrine, updated for the space age, tore apart the Valderi convoy. His ship struck and vanished, reappeared and struck again, using tactics perfected by submarine commanders long before humanity reached the stars. "Sir, communications cut in. We're intercepting Valderi distress calls. They're asking how we're doing this. They don't understand how we can attack from everywhere at once." "Send them our response," Parker ordered, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of naval warfare experience. "Tell them, the principles of warfare don't change with the medium. You just never had to learn them before." The battle ended not with a dramatic final explosion, but with the systematic destruction of every Valderi supply ship. The escorts, those that survived, retreated in disarray, leaving their supply lines in ruins. "Damage report?" Parker asked, though he already knew the answer. "Minimal, sir. 2 ships with light damage, no casualties. The Valderi never got a clean shot at any of our vessels." Parker studied the tactical display, watching the remnants of the Valderi fleet retreat. They would adapt, eventually. But by then, humanity would have evolved their tactics again, drawing on thousands of years of warfare experience that the Valderi had never needed to develop. "Send word to Colonel Harrison," he ordered. "Operation Drumbeat successful. The Valderi just learned why humanity's military history is our greatest weapon." In the silence that followed, Parker remembered an old quote from his Naval Academy days. "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it." The Valdari were about to learn just how much humanity remembered. General David "Checkmate" Reynolds studied the grand tactical display aboard the ESS Strategist, watching as thousands of pieces moved into their final positions. Every battle until now, Rodriguez's gravity sling assault, Winter's phantom fleets, Parker's wolf pack attacks, had been leading to this moment. "Status on Operation Gambit?" he asked, his chess grandmaster's mind calculating possibilities within possibilities. "The Valdari have committed 80% of their remaining fleet to defend their core worlds," Colonel Jong reported. "They're expecting another Ghost Fleet attack. Tactical analysis suggests they finally developed countermeasures for Captain Winter's decoys." Reynolds smiled. "Excellent. They've solved the puzzle we wanted them to solve." That was the beauty of it. The Valdari, brilliant in their own rigid way, had spent massive resources developing defenses against humanity's previous tactics. Their sensors could now detect inflatable decoys. Their combat computers had been updated to handle three-dimensional submarine warfare tactics. They'd even stationed picket ships along gravitational points where Rodriguez's slingshot attacks might originate. They'd learned to fight the last war perfectly. "Begin Operation Checkmate," Reynolds ordered. "Let's show them why you never play chess against a grandmaster." Across 12 sectors of space, humanity's real fleet, the one they'd been hiding all along, began to move. Not toward the Valdari core worlds, where their massive defensive fleet waited, but along paths the Valdari had dismissed as impossible. "Sir," Tactical announced, entering the gravity corridors now. The gravity corridors were Reynolds' masterpiece. Narrow paths through space where overlapping gravitational forces created natural acceleration lanes. The Valdari's rigid thinking had dismissed them as too unstable for military use. They hadn't imagined that humans would spend months calculating precise trajectories that would let entire fleets traverse them safely. "All ships, execute simultaneous emergence," Reynolds commanded. "Show them true warfare." In perfect synchronization, humanity's fleet erupted from the gravity corridors. They emerged behind the Valdari home system, bypassing their entire defensive network. The alien sensors registered the attack too late, their computers struggling to process an approach vector they'd calculated to be impossible. "Multiple targets acquired," Tactical reported with cold precision. "Their orbital defenses are facing the wrong direction. They never expected an attack from this vector." "Send the message," Reynolds ordered. Across every Valdari frequency in their own language, humanity's message played. "You assumed technology alone wins wars. You never understood that warfare is an art form. The game was over before it began." The Valdari fleet, realizing too late that they'd been drawn out of position, attempted to reverse course. But their rigid command structure, already strained by weeks of defeats, finally shattered. Different commanders tried different solutions, their carefully organized fleet dissolving into chaos. "Their defense grid is collapsing," Zhang announced. "Multiple ships are attempting emergency FTL jumps without proper calculations. 3 of their own vessels just collided." Reynolds watched as the fruits of months of planning ripened. The Valdari hadn't just been defeated, they'd been outthought. Every human tactic they'd learned to counter had been a deliberate lesson, teaching them to fight the wrong war. "All ships, execute final targeting solutions," he ordered. "Selective strikes only. We're not here for destruction." Human vessels, using weapons developed from studying Major Blake's final data, struck with surgical precision. They disabled planetary shields, knocked out command centers, and systematically dismantled the Valdari's ability to continue the war. "Sir," communications cut in. "We're receiving surrender signals from multiple Valdari command nodes." Reynolds nodded. "Send our response. Your technology was superior. Your strategy was not. This is why humanity studies warfare as an art, not just a science." As the Valdari fleet stood down, Reynolds thought of every human commander whose innovations had led to this moment. Blake's sacrifice, Rodriguez's daring, Winter's deception, Parker's adaptation of naval doctrine, all of it building to this final checkmate. "Send word to Colonel Harrison," he ordered. "Operation Checkmate successful. The Valdari just learned why you never start a war against a species that turned combat into an art form." The game was over. Now came the harder part. Teaching them how to play it right. Dr. Rebecca Iron Lady Morgan stood in the newly constructed Terran Military Academy on Neutral Ground Station, watching as the Valdari High Command filed into the lecture hall. Their crystalline armor, once a symbol of technological supremacy, now seemed brittle under the Academy's harsh lights. "Welcome to your first lesson," she began, her voice carrying the weight of Earth's entire military history. "I am Dr. Morgan, and I'll be teaching you why you lost this war before it began." The Valdari Supreme Commander, Xerax, shifted uncomfortably in the front row. The same alien who had ordered the destruction of Olympus Colony now sat like a chastened student. "Your technology was superior," Morgan continued, activating the holographic display. "Your ships were faster, your weapons more powerful, your shields nearly impenetrable. And yet," she paused, letting the silence speak volumes, "and yet you were systematically dismantled by a primitive species." The display showed Major Blake's last stand at Mars Command, then shifted through every major battle of the war. "You lost because you never understood the fundamental truth that humanity learned through millennia of conflict. Warfare is not about having the biggest guns. It's about knowing when, where, and how to use them." She walked among the alien commanders, meeting their eyes one by one. "You perfected the science of warfare while forgetting its art. You built mighty ships but never learned naval doctrine. You created perfect weapons but never grasped tactical deception. You achieved technological superiority while sacrificing strategic flexibility." The display shifted to show Rodriguez's gravity sling attack. Commander Rodriguez didn't beat you with better technology. He beat you with concepts developed by submarine commanders in Earth's Second World War. Next came Winter's Phantom Fleet operation. Captain Winters didn't defeat you with superior ships. She defeated you with inflatable decoys and electronic warfare tactics pioneered during the Cold War. Admiral Parker's Wolf Pack attacks appeared. The Admiral didn't destroy your supply lines with advanced weapons. He did it with strategies that would have been familiar to any naval commander from the past 5 centuries. Finally, Reynolds' masterful checkmate played out. And General Reynolds didn't outmaneuver you with better technology. He did it by understanding something you had forgotten: that warfare is ultimately a contest of minds, not machines. Morgan turned to face the assembled Valdari directly. "Your mistake wasn't attacking us. Your mistake was assuming that technological superiority equals military superiority. You forgot, or never learned, that war is an art form that humanity has been perfecting since we first picked up stones as weapons." She gestured to the academy around them. "These halls will now serve as your education center. You won't just learn how we defeated you, you'll learn why. You'll study everything from ancient Chinese military strategists to modern space combat doctrine. You'll learn why humanity never stops adapting, never stops innovating, never stops improving our ability to wage war." The display showed one final image: Earth, beautiful and blue, surrounded by its defense fleet. Not because we love war, but because we understand it. We understand its cost, its consequences, and most importantly, its principles. Xerax stood, his crystalline form catching the light. "And if we refuse these lessons," Morgan's smile was razor sharp, "then you'll face an enemy who has already proven they can defeat you, and who will have developed 100 new ways to do it again. The choice is yours. Learn from us, or give us a reason to demonstrate even more of humanity's martial arts." The Valdari Supreme Commander slowly sat back down. "Let's begin with your first lesson," Morgan said, bringing up an ancient text. "Sun Tzu's The Art of War. Supreme excellence consists of breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting. Remember that the next time you consider attacking a species whose history might contain more wisdom than your technology can counter." As she began the lecture, Morgan thought of Major Blake and all those who had died at Mars Command. Their sacrifice had taught humanity's greatest lesson, that victory doesn't belong to the strongest, but to those who best understand the true art of warfare. The class was in session, and the galaxy would never be the same.